It's out to deck. How you doing, guys?
Thank you.
It's like watching a film, but then all of a sudden we're in a film.
Roughly 5,000 metres above sea level. To give you an idea, that's about 700 metres on top of Kilimanjaro.
Greece cycle still going.
The Wildest Journey is basically about my attempt to try and walk a lot of Africa's wildest rivers in aid of wildlife conservation. My name's Chaz Powell. If no one's ever heard of me, I'm an expedition leader and a bit of an explorer, and I've traveled the world for about 16 years and done some, pretty incredible journeys during them times. And the last sort of 5 years, I've concentrated on this project called the Wildest Journey, which is my attempt to walk Africa's wildest rivers in aid of wildlife conservation. It came about because when I traveled the length of Africa about 10 years ago now, and I traveled, and obviously rivers were a massive part of my journey. And there's something about a river being, really symbolic, especially in Africa. It's like a life vein of the country, and people live along the river. The animals live along the river. People rely on the river, and the thought of doing a source to sea journey, a beginning to an end, was something that really sort of, made me excited and wanted to take on these journeys. So the Wildest Journey, the name came about because I was going to attempt to walk the wildest river in Africa, which is the Zambezi River. It's a 2,000-mile long river, sort of sub-Saharan Africa. It starts in Zambia on the northwestern corner, at the border of the Congo and Angola. I then had to walk around Angola for 150 miles, back into Zambia, through a huge floodplain, until I got to Victoria Falls, along Lake Kariba, into Mozambique, 2,000 miles later, then the Indian Ocean. So the journey itself took about 2 years to plan. Really sort of obviously logistically a bit of a nightmare as far as trying to walk the Zambezi, so many different national parks along the way. And I had a guide involved for the first about a year of the planning stage. And this picture here is when we were at the source of the Zambezi. And probably about an hour after this picture was taken, my guide, who was a doctor and a good friend of mine, the reality of the situation was apparent, and he decided he couldn't walk the river. So after this picture was sort of taken, I was pretty much on my own for the whole duration. I relied on the local people, not just to show the way, but the hospitality I received, especially in Zambia, some of the wilder parts of near the river and the villages. The local people pretty much guided the way. They fed me, they offered me shelter, water, bath and things, and really humbling. These people who've got pretty much nothing in their lives pretty much gave me everything that they had, and welcomed me, and it's just really sort of overwhelming to be amongst these people. The first sort of stretch of the walk, I had to walk around Angola. Angola was really logistically so difficult to get a visa for, and walking through the country once again was a reason why I couldn't really get a visa. And I tried to get a visa months in advance, and I couldn't get it. So that part of the walk, I had to walk around the country, through the border, along dusty tracks, through sort of bushland and things, until the river eventually got bigger. One of the first sort of obstacles I came against was trying to walk through the Barotse floodplains. I chose to walk at the hottest time of year on the Zambezi because these floodplains were going to be at their lowest level. But even so, during this time, temperatures were like 40 degrees Celsius at the start of this trek, and you can see from this picture there's not much shade, and even so I was walking through swamps and sort of really overgrown sort of lands to get through that section. One of the most beautiful sort of places I reached after the floodplains was the Gani Falls. It's called the Sioma Falls in Gani Falls, and it's a huge chain of waterfalls that goes sort of like a horseshoe shape. And it's rarely known about. Not many people go there or visit there compared to Victoria Falls. It's pretty unknown, and I was sat there on my own in this amazing place. And these are the sort of reasons why I decided I wanted to walk in these wild parts and to experience this sort of wildness. About halfway through the trek, the Zambezi River walk, I reached the Victoria Falls, and this became a really difficult sort of section of the walk. I've been walking for 2 months at this point. I was joined by a couple of friends at this point as well, to take some pictures and things. And as you can see from the Victoria Falls here, the water level was really low, and I had to make a decision at this point. Do I walk along the top of the falls, along the top of the gorge? So after this stretch here, there's a huge gorge, and this gorge, as you can see on this picture here, is quite steep-sided, and real difficult boulders along the ground and things. And up until this point, I'd actually walked about 20 miles a day along sort of roads and tracks and things. And as soon as I got to this point, and I had to walk by the river, I was walking maybe 2 miles a day, and the terrain was just so difficult that I actually tried to climb out of this gorge after walking down there for 2 weeks. Tried to climb out, and as you can see, these little, the cliff sides on the side of this picture, that there's not really many ways to get out of this gorge. And I actually climbed out, and I had a bit of a mishap. There was no water anywhere else except for in the river. And when I climbed out, I tried to find sort of ways to take shortcuts and things, and ended up getting lost in sort of thick overgrown bush. And then I had to try and get back down to the river, and I ran out of water, and it was 50 degrees, and I ended up having to sort of call for helicopters and things, which couldn't get to me. I was in the middle of nowhere, and in the end, I had to climb down a cliff, and I fell, and I cut my nose, and it was a bit of a crazy day, really. So yeah, I pretty much just had to rely on the river after that point. And as you can see from this picture here, I had to cook on fires. I had to sleep in my tent. I had to carry all my things. I had a water-to-go bottle to drink straight from the river. And after that sort of incident, nearly dying in the gorges, I realised that I need to stay by the river. I need to survive, and it's really important to do that. After walking the gorges, after getting through that really difficult section, I was faced with a Lake Kariba, which is a huge lake the size of Wales. I had to walk around that, and I was determined to stay near the river after obviously moving away from it and not having water. And this lake was so difficult to walk around. It was really hilly, and I either stuck to tracks or stuck to the river's edge, and the lake's edge, should I say. And it took me about 2 weeks to get around that section. After reaching around that section, I actually walked further along the Zambezi River in one journey than anyone had ever done in history. And all these explorers that had ventured in these areas, and I'd actually walked further than anyone had ever done. It was about 3 months into the journey at this point, and I was really exhausted, and I'd had loads of sort of negative news about you can't go any further. There's a huge national park in the way. I was pretty much seeing elephants every day. I was seeing sort of lions near my tent and things like that, and I was getting warnings about going into Mozambique because of terrorism and civil war happening in the areas. And it was getting really sort of draining. I'd lost about 3 stone in weight as well, and I was really sort of tired. And at this point, I tried to get into the national park. I couldn't get into the national park. I'd been charged by an elephant just days before, and I was getting really nervous and really scared. I had to actually walk around the lower Zambezi National Park, which took me an extra week on the walk. I couldn't cut across. I had to walk around. So I had to walk an extra maybe 100 miles in order to do that. To the right-hand side of this picture is the national park, and north of the picture is as you get to sort of Mozambique and crossing the border. Crossing into Mozambique, completely different vibe to Zambia. The people have been in, like I say, a bit of a civil war, and there've been a lot of political issues in the country. And the suspicion I was getting from the people was rightly so, and they wanted to know why I was there. And luckily, I had support in the country. I'd received sort of help in build up to getting into Mozambique, and I had safari companies that were helping me walk along some of the stretches of the river, especially the first bit, which was Lake Kahurabasa, which is another huge lake, the second big lake on the Zambezi. I had to walk around that, and there was just crocodiles everywhere. And the villages weren't as friendly on the stretch. I walked along the mountainous north side of the lake to start with, and then because the southern side was just a huge national park with elephants and lions and things. Once I'd walked past that sort of area, crossed over to the south, Once I reached the end of Lake Ahurabasa, there was a huge gorge again, as you can see from the picture. There's carving of the land, there's rivers going through it, and I didn't want to walk down in another gorge, you know, especially what happened last time. So I decided to take a short sort of route through the mountains, through villages, and it was at actually this point here that I reached a village, and they were quite hostile towards me being in the area, and I ended up getting into a bit of a dispute. I had to be taken into a village. The headman and the chief had to come along, and they wanted to know why I was in the village, and a huge meeting happened. Basically, after several hours of talking and discussions, they didn't believe my story. I was dragged and beaten by some guys and chucked in a room, and I was held in this room for about 3 days until I could actually get out. Third morning, I managed to get one of the guys who was being fairly nice to me to sort of let me out and go to the toilet, and I ended up just disappearing. I just went, I had my stuff and just kept moving. Once again, at that point, I tried to stay near the river. You know, I'd gone to and fro different sort of techniques along this walk, and once again, at this point, I decided to stay near the river because I'd had problems with villagers. I'd had, you know, so much stress with trying to get through areas and difficult times that I stayed back by the river at this point and sort of cracked on walking to try and complete the trek. You know, at this point, I was 3/4 of the way through the journey and really determined to finish. A lot of suspicion from people, as this picture sort of a bit of a, you know, a bit of a thing where I'd sit in a village, I'd sort of hide out the way a little bit because I'd get stared at, and I'd get sort of like a lot of suspicion. And, you know, it's rightly so, because not many people will walk through these areas, and people want to know why you're here and what are you up to, and it always looks a bit suspicious. And a lot of these people would have never seen a white person or anyone walk through their village. So the wonder and amazement from people, or shock and, you know, sort of horror from people was apparent quite a lot, to be honest. So I did reach the end of that journey, and it was 137 days of trekking for 2,000 miles. I think I took about 4 million steps during that expedition, and you know, it was just incredible. I got a bit of a taste for walking African rivers, and in 2019, early last year, myself and a friend went on to walk the length of the Gambia River. It was a world first trek. No one had ever done this trek before, and the reason being is a huge lion park in Senegal, which we had to walk through, but I'll talk about more about that in a second. But basically, the walk starts in Guinea-Conakry, in the sort of hilly areas, and flows through Guinea for about 100 miles, goes through Senegal, and then runs pretty much the length of the Gambia, the country. It's about 1,200 kilometers, this trek was. It took us 47 days from source to sea. The source of the river, quite a small place, you know, sort of in the sort of hills, and we had to be taken by a local chief to see the area and pay our respects and things, and sort of get a blessing to walk through that part of the country. Guinea was an incredible place, you know, completely different religion, cultures, beliefs, and things like that. The people were, you know, so welcoming that every time we sort of sat down, we'd get greeted by people. They'd shake our hands, they'd bring us bowls of fruit and things like that. And it was just really sort of overwhelming place to be, and completely different to some of the places I've been in the past. Like I was saying about Mozambique, with some of the problems I had, you know, Guinea was such a refreshing place because people would just greet us and just genuinely just want to know why we're there, but in a nice manner, and greet us and welcome us. Some of the places walked through were like a bit like being in a set of Aladdin or something, you know, these sort of these mosques and these temples and things we entered. And this picture here was a time when we actually reached the village, and we were welcomed and showed around. We took part in like a blessing in the mosque there, and it was really incredible. Relied on the teachers. This is the teacher, this guy in the picture. We relied on the teachers in the schools to sort of give us local knowledge and information about the river, the area, the cultures, the wildlife, the sort of languages and things like that. And they'd always help us. They'd always put us in the classroom. We could sleep in the classroom. They'd sometimes obviously offer us food and stuff like that, and water to bath, and obviously just local knowledge and information, especially about the onward journey. It was just really humbling to be amongst these people with so much knowledge of the area. Relied on the land as well. You know, we relied on the land to cook food, cooking on fires again, and camping out as much as possible, carrying what we had with us and camping along these sort of wild areas near the river. One of the hugest problems walking the Gambia River was trying to get through the Nyokola National Park, and it was only, I think we tried for like several weeks or a couple of months beforehand to try and get a visa, a permit to walk through the national park. And because it's one of the largest populations of lions in Western Africa, that we couldn't get permission. And it was only like 2 days before we managed to get permission to walk the park, we got a permit. And we had a couple of guys join us, Solly and Abdul, who joined us on the walk. These two guys here, absolute legends, who, yeah, pretty much be walking along, and they'd stop us every now and again. And we didn't want to know why they would stop, but there'd be a lion in the path or something like that. And these guys was just cool characters who got us through that section. Completely contrast of environments as well. Different environments we walk through along the Gambia. We go from hilly areas to sort of lush sort of forests to sort of like desert type environments to sort of mangrove sort of swampy areas, and really sort of interesting environments, ever changing environments. As you can see here, some difficult parts to the walk as well, walking through sort of overgrowth and sort of swampy areas at times. Historically, really interesting as well. We'd reach these stone circles and things, which I'm not sure of the age of these things, but these sort of quite abandoned places that were just in the middle of nowhere, and we'd come across these stone circle paths, and really sort of interesting, made the walk really sort of historically interesting for us. And, some of the history obviously in some of these parts of the world, most of Africa, especially the Gambia, some of the history of slavery and things, it wasn't, in history terms that long ago, and it was quite, overpowering to see these things that had happened, and quite embarrassing to know that, these things took place, and we obviously witnessed some places where it would have happened. We relied on the people once again. These people, if you were feeling down and tired and you'd walk miles and miles and miles and just drained, you just see the people, the children, they'd come over to you, and you just feel happy again. And you'd have to be, you walk through their land, it'd make you feel good, and sort of overwhelming the sort of hospitality you'd receive from people. So me and my friend Tim, we walked the length of the Gambia River. It took 47 days. And yeah, we walked to about 1,200 kilometers on that trek, reached the coast in Gambia, Banjul, the Atlantic Ocean. Very good day indeed. My next expedition was to be another world's first, walking the length of Madagascar's longest river, the Mangoki River. It starts on the west coast. Well, it doesn't start on the west coast, but also whilst walking the longest river in Madagascar, my aim is to walk from coast to coast, from east to west, across the country as well. So it's a bit of a two expedition purpose in one trip, really. So walk across the country whilst following the Mangoki River. The Mangoki River is sort of like 2/3 of the way down. We started our trek in Manakara on the right, on the east coast, and then we finished on the west in Morombe. Completely different sort of wildlife, obviously in Madagascar. I think out of 250,000 species in the country, endemic to the country, and I think 90% of the wildlife there is native to Madagascar only. So just interesting, the sort of powerful sort of draw to the country that we had, and this expedition I wanted to do as a team expedition. So I had a team of people who all had a sort of purpose on the journey. I had a friend called Justin who was a fellow adventurer, but also he was going to help film the trip. I had a girl called Emily. She was going to help. She was French, so she was going to translate for us. Also, an ecologist who was going to help study the sort of environments we went through, and a girl called Nina who was a photographer. The first section of the walk, we walked the Manakara to Fianarantsoa railway line, which goes sort of from the coast through the highlands up to sort of near where the source of the Mangoki River starts. This was like a 1-week trek which we did beforehand, and about 4 days into the walk, unfortunately Nina had a back injury, just like an ongoing injury that was carrying a bag and things, meant that the trip took us down to 3 people. During the expedition, we got several threats and warnings about security, which I wasn't 100% sure about before entering the country. But basically, as we walked, we were getting warned, you know, day on, day every day, more and more about security issues. You know, it's really dangerous. Everyone carries guns, and it's quite lawless in a lot of Madagascar. And on reaching one of the villages near the river source, we were told basically you can't go any further down this area. There's actually a lot of armed bandits, and if you continue down this area here, you will be in trouble. The thing about the Mangoki River is it's about a third of the country, but then widthways, but then it splits into several different other rivers. So it's like half of the river is the Mangoki, then the channels for the Mangoki are several other rivers. So we were following the longest channel, but then after we had this threat, we had to walk across a mountain range to get to another channel. This involved obviously moving away from the river, crossing over these sort of huge hills and mountains to get down to another river, which meant walking through rivers every day. We'd be wading up to sometimes our neck in water, and these rivers do have crocodiles, and it made things so much more difficult, having to walk obviously over mountains, but also through rivers as well, with the threat of armed bandits and crocodiles behind us, you know, as far as what potentially might come across. Beautiful scenery, you know. I can moan about walking across mountain ranges, but I do love it. And you know, some of the scenery we went through was incredible. But I think because of the weight on our shoulders from all the possible threats we were going to receive, it made it, you know, you weren't always aware how beautiful these landscapes were. And we had to sort of rush through places to get, you know, from A to B, just in case we came across bandits or any kind of threat, really. Tried to camp out, you know, just the first sort of the walk, the first sort of 3/4 of the walk, we couldn't really camp because of the security threats. But once we reached the Mangoki River, we pretty much camped out. This campsite here we call Scorpion Rock, because I think every rock we looked under, we could see a scorpion. There was one that went into Emily's tent as well, which was, yeah, but it was a beautiful spot, and it was just nice to be away from sort of the threats and just camping out and things, having a fire and cooking some food, really. This picture here is as we got to the actual main Mangoki River. So we walked from one channel to another channel, followed that channel down, we were reaching the Mangoki River, which was, you know, one of the sole purposes of this expedition, was trying to walk the Mangoki River. But we walked across the country, and we walked several of the channels to the Mangoki. So reaching the Mangoki River was an incredible, sort of overwhelming experience as well. This is who I class as the sort of team that walked across Madagascar. In this picture is myself on the left, Justin sort of centre at the back, Emily sort of to the right, and then Angelico and Fanu. These two guys were sort of guides for us, but also security, and they pretty much stayed with us for a good week or so of the expedition. And you know, Angelico on the left-hand side, he wanted to see the ocean. He'd never seen the ocean, which is quite bizarre for an island, but he wanted to join us. But this day, actually, they both decided they weren't going to continue because their lives were now in risk. You know, these guys were here to help translate security, and their lives now became in risk, and they were too scared to continue. So we had to continue with more people. This is a sort of symbolic picture, really, to sort of explain that, you know, how, you know, this expedition made me think really about how much I've put my life in danger on these trips, and possibly, you know, in the future, maybe I need to do a bit more research into sort of the dangers, especially Madagascar was so dangerous, and I've been through quite a lot at this point that I want to do. You know, my love for mountains, different environments is obviously a massive thing, and I think in the future I might not just do rivers. Even though, you know, 16 years of travel I've done several different environments and treks and things, but you know, that Madagascar trek really did trigger something in my mind to sort of maybe take it a bit more careful in the future. But we did finish that walk. It was 29 days walking 800 kilometers. We walked from coast to coast along the Mangoki River, becoming the first known people to actually walk, you know, the Mangoki River, walking across the country as well. There's a map of our route. As you can see on the right, Fianarantsoa, we sort of hit that after the railway walk, and then this sort of zigzag sort of pattern was when we were walking across rivers and mountain ranges and things, and then following the main Mangoki to the other side. Like I said at the start of the sort of talk, that one of the main reasons I do the walks is to raise awareness the loss of wildlife and wildlands in Africa and throughout the world, to be honest. And these animals are dying out at such a huge rate. You know, elephant populations, I think in the last 100 years, 97% of elephants have been wiped out. And you know, these animals are just you know, so many endangered species of wildlife in Africa and throughout the world that, you know, by trying to do a big adventure, I hope to try and raise awareness of what's happening and, you know, hopefully highlight some of the problems in the world with these different species that are dying out. If anyone wants to follow my journey and learn more, I've got several other expeditions in the pipeline, hopefully, you know, once this lockdown phase is finished. But thewildestjourney.com is my website, and anyone can get hold of me via sort of that as well if they want. Thank you very much.
Lovely stuff. So that was obviously Chaz Powell, The Wildest Journey, and his walking, a little bit different to a lot of our other things. That guy really does walk some miles. The blisters must be excessive. So are the stories, to be honest. Some of the things he's seen, obviously most of his stuff is based in Africa. He does a lot of sort of work, the sort of conservation work and that sort of thing. So it was really, really cool. I thoroughly enjoyed it, mate. He's a cool, insane guy in many ways.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's the blisters are the least of your worries, I think, though, mate. When you're out, you know, walking amongst the lions, and as we saw, getting held hostage for a few days and stuff. Really, quite incredible stuff. I think he's doing more adventures. Should check him out. I follow him on Instagram. At the moment, he's converting a van. I've found that interesting to watch. Something I'd like to do one day. So yeah. Nice one, Chaz. Next week we've got No Tears Frontiers, mate, coming up.
Him and Marissa.
Yeah.
Been on the road for 3 years. 2 up and overloaded in many ways.
And overloaded.
Yeah, that's my his book. And they've been on the road for 3 years. We left the States, drove all the way down through the Americas, down South America, over to Africa, and now they're in Uganda. So this will be an interesting one, guys. It's the first one we're living from the Armchair Adventure Festival, where we're getting the lowdown and lockdown. So that would be good. That would be good. And maybe we'll have a quick word with Tim Marissa before that comes out, mate. So at the end, when we do this little recap, we can let you guys know how they're getting on, you know, a month after the Armchair Adventure Festival.
Well, maybe we should drop them a call.
Yeah, we could do, yeah.
Why don't you drop them a call, mate, this week, and then just tag it on at the end, and the guys can see how they're getting on now. You happy to do that, aren't you?
Sure.
Brilliant. Well, we'll drop them a call. We'll see how they're getting on in Uganda, and see how they're doing out there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. So that'll be next week. No Tears Frontiers. Obviously, if you want to see how that call went, you can right away now. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you just jump on our Patreon page, $3 a month, or if like a couple of our patrons, Lisa, Richard, Vincent, they've opted to go for $5 a month, and they're festival producers. Now they get a shiny new sticker, and I've got to tell you, mate, I've got those stickers upstairs, and they're a thing of beauty.
Will you come prepared with those stickers for next week, mate?
Yeah, I will. In fact, I'm so tempted, I might sign up as a patron so I can have one of those stickers.
Okay, really handy.
I think they look lovely. So,
if you can do that, that'd be great.
Obviously, if you would like to as well, you can go for $25 a month, which is a serious financial commitment. It's like it's like getting another phone or something like that. And for that, you'll get an orange sticker. You can have one every month if you want. I don't mind sending you one of those every month if you want to become. Just let me know in the messages, and I'll send you a new sticker every month. You can have it. You can stick it wherever you want.
The light's just gone on in my background, mate. So we better finish this roundup.
Yeah. Okay.
Bring them on next week.
Okay. So next week you'll hear from No Tears Frontiers, Tim Marissa, and we'll have a chat to them in the meantime. Get the lowdown, lockdown.
Yeah. If we can't have a chat to them because I don't know, internet Uganda or internet here is difficult, maybe we'll just send them an email.
Maybe we will, but we'll do our utmost to chat to them.
Lovely.
Okay. Bye, guys.